My family had just renamed our group chat to Tuscany Sun, removing me from the conversation and the trip in one efficient little swipe. The cruelty this time was the sheer, breathtaking silence of it. I saw the photo Cassie posted of their matching luggage, a perfect set of four, gleaming under the airport lights. There was no awkward call, no flimsy excuse, just a digital amputation. I stared at the name. Richard, Helen, Cassie, and Liam's Italian adventure, and felt the familiar cold pang of being erased. But then a new feeling, hard and clear as diamond, cut through the fog. This was the last time. I toggled from the chat to a black and gold icon on my phone, an encrypted messenger that connected to exactly one person. My fingers were steady as I typed. Execute the Ethelgard purchase. All funds liquid. I'm coming home. The reply was instant. Welcome home, Nix. The house was a mausoleum of their presence, heavy with the lingering scent of my mother's Chanel No. 5. I walked past the gallery wall, a shrine to Cassie's manufactured perfection. Her equestrian ribbons, her summa cum laude certificate, her engagement photos with Liam, the man who once swore he only had eyes for me. Tucked in the corner was a single faded picture of me at 10, squinting into the sun. I used to burn with the injustice of it all. Now I felt nothing but the cool detachment of a landlord inspecting a property she was about to condemn. On the antique desk sat their family computer. Beside it, I placed my own machine, a custom-built, military-grade encrypted laptop that held the keys to my actual kingdom. A market report glowed on its screen, showing the catastrophic stock dive of North Star Innovations. It was my father's company. I was the anonymous raider who had just crippled it. My personal phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Oh, Ilara, sweetie, so sorry. This was a last-minute thing. We'll bring you back some biscotti. Happy birthday. The condescension was a reflex for her, a final little pat on the head for the girl they thought they were leaving behind. I didn't bother crafting a wounded reply. I just typed, don't worry about it, blocked her number, and deleted the thread. My packing was simple, a secure hard drive, a satellite phone, and a leather journal. Everything else could be bought. I walked out of the front door and left the key on the porch. An unmarked obsidian black Maybach was waiting at the curb, its engine a low, powerful hum. The driver, a severe-looking woman with a scar bisecting her eyebrow, opened the door without a word. As I slid onto the cool leather, she handed me a tablet. Phase 1 of the media blackout is complete, ma'am. They are officially off the grid. This meant their in-flight Wi-Fi wouldn't work. No triumphant post from 30,000 feet. The car whisked me not to the commercial airport, but to a private hangar where a Gulfstream G700 waited, its pearlescent fuselage gleaming under the afternoon sun. I was home long before they would even land. The helicopter's descent was a gut-swooping ballet of glass and steel against granite and sea. Ethelgard Island wasn't the gentle, sandy paradise of a brochure. It was a fortress. Jagged cliffs of dark gray stone plunged into a churning sapphire-blue ocean. A dense forest of ancient pines formed a crown at its peak, and built into that peak, seeming to grow from the very rock, was a breathtaking house of black steel and floor-to-ceiling glass. This was my home. This was the fortress I had built for Nix, forged in the silent, glowing crucible of code and sleepless nights. The wind from the rotors whipped my hair across my face, and the air tasted of salt, pine, and a cold, sharp freedom that scoured the last traces of my old life from my lungs. The purchase price, a figure that would have given my father an aneurysm, was nothing more than a rounding error in my accounts. As I stepped onto the polished concrete of the helipad, a man in a flawlessly tailored suit stepped forward. He was older than I'd pictured, with kind, tired eyes that held the weight of immense secrets, mostly mine. This was Mr. Sterling, the voice on the secure line, the architect of my disappearance. "Welcome home, Nix," he said, his voice the same calm baritone from the phone. "The staff has been cleared, the systems are live. The world thinks this island is owned by a shell corporation in Zurich." I gave a curt nod, my gaze sweeping across the horizon. My horizon. Are they on the ground? "Touching down in Florence as we speak," he confirmed, handing me an iPad. "They'll be through customs in 20 minutes. Plenty of time to find Wi-Fi and attempt to broadcast their triumph. I spent those 20 minutes not in triumph, but in stillness. I stood in the center of my command hub, a semicircular room where one entire wall was a screen, currently showing a tranquil live feed of the waves crashing against the cliffs below. The tech humming beneath the floorboards was my silent army, the source of the power they never knew I had. The sleek, minimalist room was the physical manifestation of my mind, orderly, powerful, and utterly devoid of them. Mr. Sterling cleared his throat softly. "Ma'am, your sister has posted." He swiped a hand across the tablet, and a portion of the main screen flickered to life, showing Cassie's Instagram feed. The photo was nauseatingly perfect. The four of them, Cassie, Liam, my mother, and my father, clinking glasses at a sun-drenched vineyard. Liam's arm was draped possessively around Cassie's shoulder. My father looked proud. My mother looked radiant. The caption was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive poison, the whole family enjoying a much-needed break. So important to be with the ones who matter. #family first, #blessed. The whole family. The lie was so blatant, so needlessly cruel, that it almost defied belief. It was designed to hurt me, a quiet little shiv meant for an audience of one. They thought I was sitting in my childhood bedroom, weeping over their rejection. They couldn't imagine I was sitting in a $50 million command center, about to drop a bomb on their carefully curated world. "They've made it public," I said, my voice flat. "They've drawn the battle lines." "Indeed," Sterling replied. "Your statement is ready. Shall I release it?" I watched the photo for a long moment. I saw the empty space where I should have been, the fifth wine glass that wasn't there, the missing ticket. That was the object of my obsession, the symbol of it all. Not the trip, not the villa, but the simple, profound statement that there was no seat at the table for me. I met Sterling's gaze in the reflection on the dark screen. I gave a single, sharp nod. His fingers danced over his tablet. Seconds later, a press release from a global financial wire service hit the internet. Enigmatic tech visionary Nix purchases Ethelgard Island archipelago in record-breaking private sale. The headline was explosive. The article, penned by a respected financial journalist I had on retainer, detailed the rumored $300 million price tag and speculated on the identity of the mysterious Nix, the ghost in the machine who had been quietly acquiring controlling stakes in everything from green energy to aerospace. The release was accompanied by stunning, high-definition aerial shots of my island, my home, my fortress. Back on Cassie's Instagram, the world tilted. The first few comments were the usual sycophantic drivel from her friends. "Looks amazing, so jealous." But then, the first stone was thrown from a distant cousin. "Wait, isn't Alara part of the family? Where is she?" Another followed from one of my old high school friends. "It's her birthday today. This is cold." Then the floodgates opened. The press release had gone viral in financial and tech circles, and the sheer, glorious audacity of the juxtaposition was too delicious for the internet to ignore. People started cross-posting. Links to the news article about the island appeared in Cassie's comments. Her sister buys an island and they leave her at home for a trip to Tuscany? LOL. #family first? More like #family worst. This picture is the definition of tacky. Read the room, guys. The still image was perfect. On one side of the internet, my family's beaming, smug faces. On the other, the stark, shocking headline of my power. The public humiliation was swift and brutal. I watched, sipping a glass of ice-cold water, the condensation on the crystal glass a welcome sensory anchor. The cries of the gulls outside my window were the only soundtrack. My phone, the personal one, began to light up with frantic, blocked calls from my father. My mother sent a stream of increasingly unhinged texts, which my system firewalled automatically. They went from feigned concern, "Alara, people are saying awful things, are you okay?" to snarling rage. "You need to call us and fix this now. You are embarrassing this family." I did nothing. I appeared passive. I let them flail in the storm I had created. Then, a text came through on my secure line, bypassing the block. It was from a number I didn't recognize, but the message made my blood run cold. "I know what you did to my father's company. I know your Nix. and I'm going to expose you. Liam. Before I could even process the threat, Mr. Sterling spoke again, his voice grim. Ma'am, you should see this. He flicked the main screen back to Instagram. Cassie's profile picture was now encircled by the pulsing pink and orange ring that meant only one thing. She was live. Her face filled the screen, blotchy, tear-streaked, her perfect vacation glow replaced by sheer panic. Her audience was growing by the thousands per second. She was about to give the performance of her life, and I had a front-row seat. Cassie's face, blotchy and swollen, filled the screen. She was performing from a lavish hotel suite, the kind my father would have booked on his corporate card, a card that would soon be declined. My mother was a spectral presence in the background, stroking her hair, a silent co-conspirator in this pathetic theater. I don't know why she's doing this to us, Cassie began, her voice cracking expertly. A tear, perfectly timed, traced a path through her expensive foundation. We begged her to come. My sister, Ilara. She's always been very sensitive, very reclusive. We thought giving her some space was what she wanted. The lies were so practiced, so smooth. She spun a story of a difficult, mentally fragile sister who they loved from a distance, a girl prone to lashing out. She was weaponizing my years of quiet endurance, turning my silent suffering into a narrative of instability. Thousands of viewers drank it in. The comments section, once a raging fire of condemnation, began to shift. Messages of sympathy for Cassie started to appear. She was wrestling back control, painting herself as the victim of a cruel, unseen force. To her audience, to my family, it looked like she was winning. They couldn't see me on the other side of the world, bathed in the cool blue light of my command center. While Cassie cried to the internet, I was on a secure multi-node video conference with my legal team in London and my chief financial strategist in Hong Kong. Their faces, grim and professional, hovered in small windows on my screen. Below them, data streams poured in, analyzing Northstar Innovation's corporate structure, its debt load, its vulnerabilities. Her performance is compelling, my lawyer, a shark named Anya, noted dryly. She's generating a significant degree of public sympathy. It's irrelevant, I stated, my eyes fixed on a chart of shareholder distribution. She's playing for sentiment. We're playing for control. The leveraged buyout clause we seeded through the Shell acquisitions is ready. The board is fractured. We can trigger a cascade at market open. My strategist Kenji chimed in from Hong Kong. The capital is in place, Nix. Once we start the buy-up, they won't have time to react. The algorithm will have acquired a controlling interest in under 7 minutes. It will be a public execution. I looked from the faces of my team to the tear-streaked face of my sister on the main screen. She was fighting a battle on a front that had already been abandoned. She was trying to win the court of public opinion while I was buying the courthouse, the judges, and the land it stood on. Are you sure you want to do this, Nix? Anya asked, a final check-in. I thought of the empty seat on the plane, the single dusty photo on the wall, the condescending text about biscotti. I'm sure, I said. Burn it to the ground. I slept for 3 hours in a sterile white sleep pod just off the command center, a luxury of efficiency that cost more than my father's car. I woke before dawn, the sky outside the glass walls just beginning to bleed from black to indigo. The only sound was the faint hum of the servers in the floors beneath me, my silent, loyal army. The air was thick with the rich, earthy smell of Kopi Luwak coffee, brewed to perfection by an automated system. This was my ritual. As the sun rose over the Atlantic, I watched the European markets open, then Asia. Finally, the pre-bell trading for the New York Stock Exchange began. At precisely 9 hours 30 minutes and 0 seconds a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I bypassed my team and keyed an authorization code directly into the system myself. I gave the final order. It was not a tidal wave of capital. It was a digital ghost. My algorithm, a piece of predatory code I had designed years ago, slipped into the market. It didn't buy in big, obvious blocks. It made tens of thousands of tiny, targeted purchases from dozens of shell accounts simultaneously, exploiting fractional price differences and latencies in the system. To the wider market, it looked like a flurry of unremarkable noise. To the board of Northstar, it was invisible until it was too late. At 9 hours 37 minutes and 14 seconds a.m., the stock was halted. An SEC filing, pre-drafted by Anya's team, was automatically released. North Star Innovations had been acquired in a multi-billion-dollar hostile takeover by a private fund, Ethelgard Capital. The filing included a terse addendum. The board was dissolved effective immediately. A new interim CEO, known only as Nix, would be assuming direct control and addressing the company at noon. An internal memo went out to every single employee at North Star, from the mailroom to the C-suite, from my father to his protege, Liam. Mandatory emergency video conference, 12 p.m. EST. Attendance is not optional. At noon, I sat at my console. I didn't activate my camera. I activated a voice modulator, transforming my voice into something deeper, genderless, and utterly devoid of emotion. It was the voice of pure, dispassionate authority. The screen before the thousands of employees was black, save for the geometric golden logo of Ethelgard Capital. "Good afternoon," the voice rumbled through their speakers. My voice. "I am Nix. As of this morning, I am the owner of this company, your new CEO." I could imagine the scene, the open-plan offices falling silent, the blood draining from my father's face in his corner office, Liam, surrounded by his sycophantic team, staring in disbelief. "The era of stagnation at North Star is over," I continued, my words precise and cold. "My vision is one of ruthless efficiency and relentless innovation. Merit will be the only metric. Loyalty will be to results, not to individuals." I paused, letting the silence hang in the air. To that end, I am immediately terminating several underperforming and fiscally irresponsible vanity projects. The Odyssey initiative is canceled, effective immediately. I knew Liam was the head of the Odyssey initiative. It was his baby, the project that was supposed to make him a vice president before he was 30. I had just strangled it in its crib in front of the entire company. Furthermore, I went on, I have initiated a full forensic audit of all executive-level departments going back 5 years. Any and all financial discrepancies and wasteful expenditures will be dealt with severely. The age of entitlement at this company is over. My father's department was notorious for its lavish client dinners and business trips to golf resorts. He was the direct target. I was a phantom to them, a ghost in their machine, a terrifying, omniscient force that had seized their world. They felt the crushing weight of the blows, but they couldn't see the hand that delivered them. I ended the call without taking questions, leaving only the stark golden logo on their screens. Mr. Sterling entered the room, his face impassive. "Phase 2 is complete," he said. "Reports from our internal assets at North Star confirm widespread panic. However, there is a complication." He paused. "Your father had a panic attack during the call. Paramedics were dispatched to his hotel in Florence. Liam is with him, apparently telling everyone who will listen that the anonymous Nixes is deliberately persecuting his family." The irony was a physical thing, a bitter taste in my mouth. Before I could respond, a notification pinged. It was an email, forwarded by Anya, that had somehow made it through their corporate firewalls to the new, confidential leadership inbox. It was from Liam. He was pleading his case not for his own job, but for my father's. He wrote of my father's decades of loyalty, painting him as a victim of a cruel, faceless corporate raider. He begged Nix, not to destroy a good man. I stared at his words, at his desperate defense of the man who had stood by and watched as his own daughter shattered my heart. I felt no pity, only the cold, hard certainty of my path. I left the email unanswered. Minutes later, a second email from Liam arrived. This one was different, shorter. The tone had shifted from pleading to dawning horror. "Cassie always said her sister Ilara was some kind of unstable tech genius who hated our family, and your fund is called Ethelgard. That's a strange, specific name. I have to ask, is this you? Is this some kind of sick, twisted revenge?" The question hung in the digital space between us, a desperate, brilliant shot in the dark. "Is this you?" Liam's accusation was the first time any of them had come close to grasping the truth, and I felt a flicker of something, not fear, but a cold, electric thrill. They were beginning to understand the scale of the game they were playing, even if they still couldn't comprehend the nature of their opponent. I didn't reply. The most powerful statements are often the ones left unsaid. Silence is a canvas onto which the guilty paint their own fears. Their Tuscan vacation had fully devolved into a waking nightmare. I knew this because I was watching them. One of my smaller, more vindictive acquisitions, as Nick's had been a controlling interest in the boutique hotel chain they'd chosen. It was a petty indulgence, but it gave me access to the building's security feeds. From my silent throne on Ethelgard, I watched the four of them in the hotel lobby, a grainy, four-person drama of decay. My father, pale and shrunken, repeatedly checking his phone for news about his defunct career. My mother, her face a mask of pinched fury, gesturing wildly at Cassie. And Cassie, the golden child, her Instagram-perfect composure shattered, yelling back at her mother. Liam stood apart from them, pacing like a caged wolf, his eyes darting towards every camera as if he could feel me watching. He was the only one who seemed to grasp that they weren't just unlucky. They were being hunted. Their arguments were a predictable cocktail of blame and panic. They were turning on each other, the flimsy bonds of their perfect family dissolving under the first real pressure they had ever faced. It was Cassie who made the next mistake. Fueled by her own manufactured narrative of my fragility, she did something truly desperate. She called the non-emergency police line in my old hometown and officially filed a missing persons report. She told the dispatcher that her mentally unstable sister, Ilara, had vanished after a family disagreement and could be a danger to herself. It was the final piece I needed. The report triggered an automatic welfare check. Mr. Sterling patched me into the body cam feed of the two officers who arrived at my family's house, my house. I watched them walk up the manicured stone pathway past my mother's prize-winning roses and knock on the front door I had walked out of days before. Of course I wasn't there. The officers filed their report, occupant missing, no signs of forced entry. But Cassie had now officially involved law enforcement. She had created a public record of her concern. She had handed me the moral and legal justification for what I was about to do next. The house was their kingdom. The sprawling Tudor-style home in the wealthy suburb was the ultimate symbol of their success, the stage for all their parties, the backdrop for Cassie's perfect life. What they didn't know was that 6 months ago, after my father took a bath on a bad investment and quietly missed 2 mortgage payments, I had the bank an offer they couldn't refuse. Acting through a labyrinthine series of shell corporations, I had bought the entire mortgage. For the last half a year, they had been living in my house, paying rent to an anonymous holding company, completely oblivious that their landlord was the daughter they kept erasing from the family photos. Liam's email confirms they suspect your involvement, however tenuous, Mr. Sterling said, his voice calm as ever as he stood beside me. Cassie's police report is a direct provocation. How do you wish to proceed? I looked at the live feed of the front door, the very door they had closed on me so many times. It was time to lock it for good. They've involved the authorities to paint me as unstable, I said, my voice cold. Let's show them what stable looks like. I turned to him. Serve the papers. The third humiliation was not digital. It was brutally, beautifully analog. A grim-faced process server in a cheap suit walked up that same manicured pathway. He didn't knock. He took a single folded document, an official notice of eviction, and taped it squarely to the center of the grand oak front door. A still image of ultimate defeat. At the exact same moment, a courier delivered a registered letter to their hotel in Tuscany. I watched on the lobby camera as my father signed for it, his hands trembling. He tore it open. I couldn't hear his words, but I saw his face crumple, the color draining from it as he read the letter from Ethelgard Holdings. It informed them that due to a breach of their tenancy agreement, specifically filing a false and malicious police report against the property's legal owner, their lease was terminated. They had 30 days to vacate the premises and remove all personal belongings. My phone rang. A direct call somehow pushed through my firewalls. It was my mother. I answered, putting it on speaker, and was met with a wall of sound, a hysterical, shrieking torrent of rage and disbelief. How dare you? How could you do this to us? The house? After everything we've given you? You ungrateful, sick little... I said nothing. I let her scream. I listened to the raw, unfiltered sound of her panic, the sound of a queen who had just been cast out of her castle. There was no argument I could win with words that would be half as satisfying as the victory I was winning with my silence. When her screaming subsided into ragged, gasping sobs, I calmly disconnected the call. Their world was now almost entirely dismantled. Their reputation was in tatters. My father's career was over. Liam's was kneecapped. Their home was gone. They were trapped in a foreign country with dwindling funds and no safe harbor to return to. I knew what they had left, the last bullet in their gun. My grandmother, the only person in the family who had ever truly seen me, had left a small trust fund to be split evenly between Cassie and myself upon my 25th birthday. It wasn't life-changing money for me anymore, but for them, it would be a lifeline. And my mother was the executor. Their next move was obvious. It was the only move they had left. "They're making their play," Mr. Sterling announced a day later, confirming my thoughts. He placed a tablet in front of me, displaying a new email intercepted by my team. It was an inquiry from my mother to a Dr. Alastair Finch, a psychiatrist in New York with a reputation for being flexible. She was requesting an urgent consultation to discuss an emergency psychiatric evaluation for her disturbed daughter, with the goal of seizing control of her financial assets on grounds of mental incompetence. It was their final, pathetic gambit, and I had been waiting for it. "Dr. Finch," I said with a thin smile. "He's on the North Star Innovations payroll as a human resources consultant, isn't he?" Mr. Sterling's eyebrow arched in appreciation. "Yes, and as of noon yesterday, his contract is under review by your office." "Good," I said, standing up and walking towards the great glass wall overlooking the sea. "Let them schedule the call. Let them bring their hired gun. I think it's time I finally had a face-to-face chat with my family." The trap was set. I agreed to the video conference, of course. I let them choose the time. I let them feel a sliver of control, the most dangerous illusion you can give a desperate person. When the time came, I didn't take the call from my darkened command center. I took it from the living space of my home, a room of soaring ceilings and minimalist white furniture. Behind me, through a wall of seamless glass, the afternoon sun danced on the surface of the Atlantic. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. I wore a simple, cream-colored cashmere sweater. I wanted them to see me. Not Nyx, the phantom. Not Ilara, the victim. Just me, calm and thriving in a paradise of my own making. Their faces blinked onto the main screen, clustered together in a single, gloomy window. They were huddled in a drab hotel room, the kind with generic art and bad lighting. They looked haggard. My father's face was sallow, my mother's was tight with rage, Cassie's was puffy from crying. Liam looked haunted. Beside their window was another, a man in his 50s with a smug, placid face and a perfectly coiffed head of silver hair, Dr. Alastair Finch. He began the proceedings with an air of practiced solemnity. "Ilara, thank you for joining us," he started, his voice a rich, condescending purr. "Your family has reached out to me. They are exceptionally worried about you." I simply nodded, letting him talk. I watched as my family, one by one, performed their parts. My father spoke of my history of erratic behavior, my withdrawal from family. My mother spoke of my sudden and alarming disappearance and my refusal to communicate, her voice quivering with false concern. Cassie, the star performer, spoke of my paranoid tendencies and delusions, referencing the cryptic Nyx persona as evidence of a dangerous break from reality. They were building their case for the court, for the trust fund, for anyone who would listen. They were describing a person who no longer existed. Finally, Dr. Finch turned his full clinical attention to me. "Ilara," he said, leaning into his camera, "your family is very concerned. It's clear you're in a great deal of pain. Can you tell me where you are right now? Can you tell me who this Nyx's person is? We just want to help you." I let a small, genuine smile touch my lips. The contrast between my serene expression and the horror story they had just painted was, I hoped, jarring. "I'd be happy to, Doctor," I said, my voice even and clear. "But before we continue, I have a procedural question. You're a contracted consultant for North Star Innovations, are you not? For psychiatric evaluations in their executive leadership program?" Dr. Finch blinked, thrown off script. "Well, yes. My firm has consulted for them for several years, but this is a private family matter. I disagree, I interrupted smoothly. As the new owner and CEO of North Star Innovations, I am reclassifying this session. This is now a professional consultation regarding a potential security risk involving false statements made by a current employee, your father, Liam, and a former one. Dr. Finch, please send your invoice for this call directly to my family office. I'll have my legal team review your firm's contract next week. Silence. Absolute stunned silence. Dr. Finch's smug mask melted into confusion and naked fear. He was no longer a predator. He was just another employee whose livelihood I now held in my hands. I saw Liam flinch as if I'd struck him. I turned my gaze from the doctor and looked directly at the window, holding the 4 people who had defined my life through their rejection. You want to know who Nix is? I asked, my voice dropping the polite tone. Nix is the name I chose for myself 5 years ago when I started the company that built the trading algorithm that allowed me to systematically acquire a controlling interest in the company your father ran into the ground. The island you saw in the news? This is my office view. With a slow, deliberate movement, I picked up the tablet I was using and panned the camera across the room, showing them the immense sun-drenched space, the infinity pool bleeding into the horizon, the endless, empty ocean. I brought the camera back to my face. The house you were just evicted from? I bought it last Christmas as a birthday present to myself. You've been paying rent to me for 6 months. My father made a choking sound, his hand flying to his chest. Cassie's perfectly shaped jaw went slack, her eyes wide with a horror that was, for the first time, completely genuine. You're Nix? Liam whispered, the words catching in his throat. He looked at me, truly looked at me, and I could see the dawning comprehension of just how completely he had been outplayed. I am, I confirmed, my voice as hard and unforgiving as the cliffs outside. There was no triumph in it, just the cold, hard weight of fact. And since we're clearing the air, let's be very specific. Liam, the project I canceled wasn't canceled out of spite. It was canceled because it was bleeding millions of dollars a quarter with no viable product. And you were hiding the losses in fraudulent quarterly reports. Dad, I said, and the word tasted like ash in my mouth. The department I'm auditing wasn't a random choice. It was because your expense reports for the last 3 years have been a work of fiction, funding a lifestyle this family couldn't actually afford. Your corruption made the company vulnerable. All I did was walk through the door you left wide open. I leaned in closer to the camera, my eyes locking on my sisters. And Cassie. The instability and paranoia you've been so worried about? That was me working 20-hour days, building an empire, and creating a new life while you were all busy planning vacations and deciding which photo of me to take down next. The difference between us is that when my world wasn't fair, I built a new one. When yours wasn't, you just cried on the internet. The power balance hadn't just flipped, it had been annihilated. They were not dealing with their broken, forgotten little sister. They were not dealing with a mentally incompetent girl they could manipulate. They were dealing with a self-made billionaire who owned their past, their present, and their future. They had tried to kick me out of their tiny little world, so I had bought it, and now I was locking the door. I looked at their 4 frozen, shattered faces. I had said everything I needed to say. I reached out and ended the call, plunging them into a digital silence that was louder than any screaming match. The screen went black. A moment later, Mr. Sterling entered the room, holding a single sheet of paper. He placed it on the table in front of me. It was a formal communication from what was left of the North Star Innovations Board. They had received and accepted Richard's immediate resignation. The final tie was cut. A month passed. A month of silence. I spent it not reveling in my victory, but in quiet consolidation. I restructured North Star from the top down, promoting the brilliant minds my father had overlooked and cutting the dead wood he had protected. I finalized the legal framework for a charitable foundation that would fund scholarships for women in STEM. The war was over. Now I was terraforming the craters into something new, something that would grow. I breathed. For the first time since I was a child, I felt my lungs fill with my own air. Then, they appeared on the horizon. I saw them first as a blip on the long-range radar, a small, non-sanctioned vessel heading towards the island. I watched on a high-powered camera as they chugged across the choppy water, a sad-looking charter boat that must have cost them the last of their liquid assets. From there, they would have had to hire a local ferry to make the final approach. I watched them dock at the public pier a mile from my property line, the four of them looking small, tired, and utterly defeated. This was not an attack. This was a pilgrimage. They walked the mile up the winding road to my gate. It was a formidable barrier of blackened steel and reinforced concrete, designed to withstand a direct assault. It made the four of them look like supplicants at the gates of a silent, angry God. I watched on the camera as my father, his shoulders slumped, reached out a trembling hand and pressed the button on the intercom. His voice, when it came through the speakers in my study, was a dry, weak rasp. "Alara, it's Dad. Please, we need to talk to you. We are so sorry." I granted them entry, not to my home with its warmth and light, but to a place I had built for such occasions. A small, open-air meeting pavilion set on a cliffside, far from the main house. It was a sterile, intimidating space of white marble and sharp angles, furnished with only a long, imposing table and chairs. It offered a stunning view of the ocean, a constant reminder of the vastness that now separated us. I was there first, sitting at the head of the table. I watched them make the long walk from the gate. They looked like ghosts haunting the landscape of their own ruin. They sat down at the far end of the table, the 10 feet of polished marble between us feeling more like 10 miles. My father spoke first, his eyes on the table. "There's no excuse for what we did, Alara. What I let happen. I was weak. I was so focused on appearances, on Cassie, that I didn't see you. I failed you as a father, completely." My mother was next, her voice stripped of its usual venom, leaving only a brittle weariness. "I was cruel to you. I know I was. I was jealous of your mind, jealous of the way your grandmother looked at you. I thought if I pushed you down, it would make Cassie shine brighter. It was ugly. It was unforgivable." Cassie, her face pale and without a trace of makeup, looked at me directly for the first time. Her eyes were red-rimmed but clear. "I hated you for being smart without trying," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Everything was a competition for me, and you were the one person I could never beat. So I tried to make you disappear. I made sure you were left out, ignored. The trip, the parties, all of it. That was all me. I'm sorry." Finally, Liam, who hadn't looked up from his hands, spoke. "I was a coward. I loved you. I think a part of me always will, but I was a coward. I chose the easy path. I chose her, and the family, and the job. I betrayed you, for nothing." Their apologies hung in the clean, salt-laced air. They were real, I thought. The desperation, the regret, the sheer, grinding misery of their new reality had stripped them down to the bone. They were telling the truth because they had nothing left to lose. Cassie took a shaky breath, her composure finally breaking. "We have nothing," she choked out, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "The house, the jobs, the money, it's all gone. We've been living in a terrible little motel for a week. Please, Alara, you've won. You've taken everything. Can you just stop? Can you help us?" She was asking for a seat back at the table, a handout from the new queen. I looked at their 4 broken faces, and I felt the weight of all the years of quiet tears, of birthdays spent alone, of being the ghost in my own home. And then, for the first time, I felt that weight lift, floating away on the sea breeze. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about justice. It was about peace. My peace. I met my father's gaze, then my mother's, then Cassie's, then Liam's. I let the silence stretch, letting them hang on the precipice of their last, desperate hope. Then, I gave them my answer. No. The word was not angry, it was not triumphant. It was a fact. A boundary line drawn in stone. A locked door. It was the calmest, most powerful word I had ever spoken. I stood up from the table. "Mr. Sterling will escort you back to your ferry." I turned and walked away, my footsteps echoing on the marble. As I neared the path leading back to my house, back to my life, I heard my mother's voice cry out one last time, a thin, cracking thread of sound. But we're your family. I didn't turn around. I just kept walking. The word family followed me on the wind, thin and meaningless, and then it was gone, swallowed by the sound of the waves. I didn't look back. I never saw them again. The story doesn't end with their destruction. It ends with my peace. The epilogue of my life began not in fire, but in the quiet dawn of the following spring. I woke not to the silent, urgent hum of servers, but to the gentle chorus of seabirds and the rhythmic sigh of the waves washing against the shore below my home. The sun, when it rose, filled my bedroom with a soft, golden light, and the air that drifted in from the open balcony doors no longer tasted of revenge, but of salt and wild jasmine. My days found a new rhythm, one dictated by the sun and the tides, rather than by market openings and SEC filings. I spent my mornings with my feet in the sand, walking the length of a private beach that was once just a line item on a budget. The obsessive fire that had forged Nyx had cooled into a steady, warm hearth. I still ran my empire, but not from a darkened command center. I had hired a brilliant CEO to manage the day-to-day operations of North Star, a woman I had promoted from the engineering department who had been suppressed by my father's regime. I trusted her. My work now was different. It was the work of planting trees whose shade I might never sit in. I sat on my veranda, the warm sun on my face, and took a video call on a tablet. The face that greeted me was not a lawyer or a strategist, but a bright-eyed 19-year-old girl from inner-city Detroit. She was the first recipient of the Nyx Scholarship. Her name was Maria, and she was talking a mile a minute, her face alight with passion as she showed me the robotics lab at her university, a place she never would have seen without the Foundation's help. And the new manipulator arm uses a predictive motion algorithm that I think I can make 30% more efficient, she exclaimed, her excitement so pure it was contagious. That's brilliant, Maria, I said, and my smile was effortless, genuine. Send me the proposal. If you need more funding for the prototype, you'll have it. This was true power. Not the ability to ruin 4 people, but the ability to build one up. Mr. Sterling remained, though his role had changed. He was less an employee and more of a confidant, a wry, steadfast friend who had been the sole witness to my transformation. We no longer spoke of hostile takeovers or media blackouts. We spoke of the migrating patterns of the whales that passed the island in winter and debated which of the classic novels in my library I should read next. He was the family I had chosen, a relationship built on mutual respect, not on obligation or accident of birth. One evening, as the sun began its final fiery descent, I stood on the westernmost point of the island, a cliff of smooth, warm stone. The sky was a breathtaking canvas of orange, pink, and deep violet. I watched a boat on the horizon, a white tourist ferry, making its slow way across the water. A year ago, the sight would have sent a jolt of adrenaline through me, a flicker of the old paranoia. Now, it was just a boat. It had nothing to do with me. The world was out there, full of its own stories, and I was in here, content in mine. The story had begun with an empty seat, a small, painful void where I was supposed to be. It had been the catalyst for everything. Now I looked out at the vast, empty ocean, the endless sky, the island that was all my own. I had taken that void and filled it with the entire world. I felt the sea breeze on my skin. I listened to the waves crash against the rocks, and for the first time in my entire life, I felt truly, completely, and irrevocably home.